There's a seat waiting for you, a window seat, soft and warm with the faint smell of wood smoke and wool. Outside, the world is very still, and the train is about to move. You are already here, you are already safe, and there is nowhere else you need to be tonight. You are sitting inside a slow, gently moving train, and this train is carrying you through the alpine mountains. The carriage is warm and quiet, the seat holds you completely. Outside the wide window beside you, the world passes in soft, unhurried frames, white peaks, deep valleys, small sleeping villages, forests wrapped in mist. The train moves slowly, rhythmically, with a sound like breathing. There is nothing dramatic on this journey, nothing sudden, nothing that asks anything of you. You are simply here, held by motion and warmth, watching the mountains pass in the long and peaceful way that mountains do when you are not in a hurry to go anywhere at all. Close your eyes for a moment or keep them open. Either way, you are already on the train. And the train is already moving. The seat beneath you is padded and wide, upholstered in something deep green and worn smooth by years of travelers who came before you and sat exactly where you are sitting now, looking out at the same mountains, feeling the same slow sway. The fabric is soft against the back of your arms. The headdress behind you is just firm enough to hold your neck in that way that makes you feel supported without even trying. You settle in without effort. Your spine finds the seat's gentle curve and simply rests there. Beneath your feet, the floor hums. It is a very low sound, almost below sound, more of a sensation than a noise, a continuous, even vibration that travels up through your legs and into your body and settles somewhere behind your ribs, steady and soft. This is the engine far away at the front of the train doing its quiet work. It never surges, it never roars. It is simply there like a heartbeat, keeping everything moving at the same slow and certain pace. The window beside you is wide and clean. A faint trace of condensation has gathered at the lower corners, and you can see the cold on the other side of the glass even without touching it. Outside, the light is the particular pale gold of a winter morning in the high mountains, not quite sharp, not quite warm, but luminous in the way that snow makes light luminous, filling the air with a softness that comes from every direction at once. The peaks are there, white and enormous and perfectly still. They have been there for 10,000 years, and they will be there long after this train has finished its journey, and there is something deeply reassuring about that, something that lets your shoulders drop just a little further toward the floor. The train moves through a long open stretch of valley. On your left, a mountainside rises steeply, its lower slopes thick with dark pine trees whose branches carry heavy pads of snow. Some of the snow has slid and gathered in soft drifts along the base of the trees. Some of it still rests, perfectly balanced in the crooks of branches, in the cups formed by where one limb meets another. The pines stand in rows that are almost orderly and then suddenly, beautifully irregular, the way nature arranges things when nothing has interrupted it for a long time. On your right, the valley opens wide. A river runs through it, narrow and quick, its surface broken and silver where it catches the morning light. Along its banks, the snow is thinner, worn away by the water's breath. You can see smooth gray stones beneath the shallows near the edge. The river makes no sound you can hear from inside the train, but you imagine it anyway, that clean, continuous rushing sound, the sound of water that has been moving for a very long time and knows exactly where it is going. The train crosses a short wooden bridge. The sound changes briefly, a deeper hollow knock replacing the smooth roll of the rails, and then it passes and the regular rhythm returns, and you settle back into it as naturally as you settle back into breathing after a long exhale. There are other passengers in the carriage, but they are quiet. Somewhere behind you, someone shifts in their seat. Ahead near the far end of the car, a pair of boots are visible beneath a seat, toes pointing toward the ceiling, belonging to someone who has already given in to sleep. The carriage has the particular stillness of a shared space where everyone has agreed, without speaking, to be gentle with one another. The only sounds are the steady percussion of wheels on rails, the faint groan of the carriage as it sways through a long curve, and the soft, barely audible breath of the heating system that keeps the interior at exactly the right temperature, warm but not stuffy, comfortable but not heavy. You let your hands rest in your lap. There is nothing they need to hold, nothing they need to do. They simply lie there, palms upward or downward, it doesn't matter, relaxed and still. The mountains outside are getting closer. The valley is narrowing. The train begins to move between walls of stone, and for a few minutes the sky above is reduced to a long pale strip between the ridgelines, pale blue fading to white where it meets the snow. The light in the carriage shifts slightly, takes on a cool tint, and then opens again as the valley widens and the mountains pull back on either side. And suddenly you can see for many kilometers in every direction white slopes, dark forests, a pale and enormous sky, and somewhere far away, the faint smear of a cloud resting against the upper third of a distant peak. It is so quiet. Not silent, there's always the train, always the wheels, always the low hum of movement, but quiet in the way that mountains are quiet, which is a fullness rather than an absence, a quality of air and distance, and cold that absorbs sound rather than eliminating it. You breathe in slowly. Even the air inside the carriage smells of mountains. There is something clean in it, something slightly mineral, like stone and cold water and the resin of pine trees. It comes from somewhere, perhaps a small gap in the window seal, and it makes each breath feel just a little more nourishing than the last. The train passes through a cluster of dark pines and then emerges into a clearing where a frozen lake is visible on your right, its surface a perfect pale gray, slightly luminous, like a sheet of polished pewter set into the valley floor. The lake is surrounded by a fringe of reeds, their dry stems poking up through the snow at the water's edge, bent slightly by weeks of cold wind. In the middle of the lake, the ice is smooth and unbroken. Near the shore, you can see the texture of it, rough and ridged where wind had pushed the water before it froze, then smoother further out where the cold had taken the surface quickly and left it flat. A single bird is standing on the ice near the far edge of the lake. You cannot tell what kind from here. It is small and still, facing away from you, and by the time the train has carried you past the place where you could see it, it has not moved at all. The lake slides out of view, the pines return. The rhythm of the wheels continues its patient conversation with the rails, a sound that has no urgency in it, a sound. That is simply the sound of going, of covering distance without haste, of the world being passed through gently. You feel your body growing heavier in the seat, not uncomfortably so. It is the pleasant heaviness that comes with warmth and stillness, when your muscles realize they are not needed and begin, one by one, to release whatever they have been holding. Your legs feel long and loose. Your shoulders are lower than they were when you first sat down. The small muscles around your eyes have stopped working as hard as they usually do. The train takes a long, sweeping curve to the left, and through the window you can briefly see the front of the train itself. The dark locomotive rounding the bend ahead of you, a faint disturbance of steam or exhaust rising from it and dissolving almost immediately into the cold air. Then the curve straightens and the locomotive disappears from view, and you are once again looking at mountains, at sky, at the long white slope of a hillside that rises from the edge of the tracks and climbs until it meets the tree line far above. You notice the quality of the light changing. It is still morning, still the soft gold of early winter sun, but the shadows of the mountains are long and precise, cutting sharp edges across the snow. Where the shadow falls, the snow is blue. Where the sun reaches, it is white verging on gold. The contrast is beautiful in a way that doesn't demand anything of you. You don't need to photograph it or describe it or remember it. It is simply there outside your window, happening in its own slow and indifferent way, and you are simply here, warm and still, watching it pass. The train slows almost imperceptibly. The rhythm of the wheels lengthens just slightly, each beat coming a fraction of a second later than the last, and you feel the gentle deceleration in your body, a faint forward pull that is so slight it barely registers. Then, through the window, a small station appears. It is made of dark wood, painted in the deep red that seems to belong to mountain stations the way pine trees belong to mountain slopes, inevitably, perfectly. The platform is narrow. A row of lanterns hangs from the eaves of the station roof, unlit now in the morning light but visible, their glass globes catching the pale sun. A single bench sits on the platform, its wooden slats painted the same dark red. A potted plant beside the station door is covered in frost. Its leaves stiff and silver. The train slides to a stop with a long exhalation, steam or air breaks, a soft settling sound, and for a moment everything is completely still. The wheels are not moving. The vibration in the floor is gone. In its place is a deep and perfect quiet, broken only by the faint sound of cold wind moving across the platform outside, and somewhere nearby, the slow clang of a distant bell. A door opens at the far end of the carriage. A brief intrusion of cold air reaches you, not unpleasant, just a reminder that the world outside the train is winter. Then the door closes, the bell fades, and after a long, peaceful pause, the train begins to move again. So gently, so slowly, as if it has no particular reason to hurry. as if the mountains ahead are patient and the day is long and there is time for everything. The wheels find their rhythm again. The platform slides backward past your window, the red station, the frosted plant, the unlit lanterns, all of it moving past in the way that fixed things move when you are the one in motion, steady and slow and then gone. The pines return, the valley continues, and you are moving again through the alpine morning and everything is exactly as it should be. Time passes in the gentle way it passes when there is nothing to count it by except the landscape. A valley deepens and narrows. A ridgeline rises on your left, its upper edge jagged against the pale sky. The trees thin as you climb, you can feel the grade in the faint backward lean of your body, the train working slightly harder against the slope, the engine's low hum shifting almost imperceptibly in pitch. The snow on either side of the tracks is deeper here, and in some places it has been cut back to clear the rails, leaving walls of packed white on each side that reach almost to the windows. Through these corridors of snow you pass, and the light dims slightly, filtered now by the closeness of the walls, and then the cut opens and the sky returns, wide and pale and impossibly high. A hawk is circling above the ridge. You watch it for as long as you can, its slow, patient spiraling, the way it tilts in the updraft without moving its wings, the way it seems to have no destination and no urgency, only the long, lazy grammar of flight. Then a curve takes it from view, and the ridge, and you are looking at open sky again, and the hawk is already a memory, already part of the long procession of things seen from trains, beautiful and complete and impossible to hold. The carriage rocks gently through a series of small curves. Each one tilts you slightly left, then slightly right, a slow oscillation that is as natural and soothing as being rocked. You feel it in your hips, in the long muscles of your back, in the way your weight shifts without any effort on your part. The seat absorbs it all. The seatback accepts the gentle rhythm. You are being carried in the most literal sense, not just transported from one place to another, but physically held and moved, the train doing all the work while you simply exist within it. Below you now you can see it from the window if you lean slightly, though you don't need to, a river valley, much deeper than before. The drop is sudden and dizzying if you focus on it, so you let your eyes rest on the middle distance instead, where the slopes are covered in a dense and even forest of spruce and fir, their dark shapes repeated endlessly down the hillside until they reach the silver thread of the river far below. The forest is so dense and so uniform that from here it looks almost like texture, like the surface of something, rather than individual trees. It is the kind of forest that has been there for centuries, that has survived seasons and storms and the long passage of glaciers, and it looks permanent in the way that only very old things look permanent. The train crosses a bridge. You feel it before you see it, the rails singing differently, the sound opening up beneath you as the ground falls away and you are suspended over air and distance. The bridge is not dramatic. It is a working bridge, all dark iron girders and rivets, functional and solid, designed to last rather than to impress. But there is something affecting about it nonetheless. The fact of being held up over void, the valley falling away far below, the river a thin bright line at its bottom, and the train continuing its steady, unbothered passage across this span without slowing, without hesitation, as if height and distance mean nothing to it at all. The far side of the bridge arrives, the ground returns beneath you. The forest closes in again on both sides, and the light shifts to that dappled, filtered quality that comes from moving through trees, an alternation of light and shadow that plays softly across the interior of the carriage, across your hands and your lap and the seat beside you. You feel your eyelids settling, not closing or perhaps closing just slightly, just enough to soften the edges of what you see, to turn the passing trees into a gentle blur of dark and light. This is fine. This is exactly right. You can let your eyes do whatever they need to do. The train will keep moving. The mountains will keep passing. And you will stay exactly where you are, warm and held and carried forward through the long alpine morning. Somewhere in the carriage, someone has opened a thermos. The faint smell of hot coffee reaches you, deep and slightly bitter, the smell of warmth rather than the drink itself. It mingles with the smell of the carriage, the wood and the warming air and the distant mineral trace of the mountains, and the combination is somehow perfect, somehow exactly the smell that a slow train through winter mountains should smell like. The trees thin again, the valley widens, and ahead through the window you can see the first of the high peaks, truly high now, far above the tree line, their upper faces exposed rock and permanent snow, catching the morning sun in a way that makes them seem almost incandescent, lit from within by some cold and steady light. They are beautiful the way that things are beautiful when they are completely indifferent to whether you find them beautiful. They existed before there were eyes to see them, and they will exist long after. They simply are in the way that mountains simply are, and you are simply here, looking at them from a warm seat on a slow train, and this is one of the quietly lucky moments of a life. The train passes through a small mountain village. This happens without announcement, without any change in speed, the village simply arriving and then receding like everything else on this journey, gently, in its own time. The houses are close to the tracks here, their back walls separated from the rails by only a few meters of snow-covered ground. They are built in the mountain-style steep roofs to shed the heavy winter snows, walls of dark timber and pale plaster, window shutters painted in deep greens and reds. Some of the shutters are open, and in one or two windows you can see curtains moving slightly, the suggestion of warmth inside. A woodpile beside one house is perfectly stacked, the logs arranged with the kind of care that suggests they were stacked in autumn by someone who takes satisfaction in doing things properly. Snow has gathered in a thin layer along the top of the pile, following the contours of the wood. A church steeple rises above the roof lines, white, with a small dark spire, its bell not ringing now but visible, a dark shape inside the open bell tower. Beyond the church, the village ends as abruptly as it began, and the fields return, and then the forest, and then the mountains. A dog stands at the edge of the tracks, watching the train pass. It is a large dog, dark brown, and it stands completely still, ears forward, with the focused and patient attention that dogs bring to things they find interesting. As the train passes it, its head turns slowly to follow, and for a moment you and the dog are looking directly at each other through the glass, or almost directly, because dogs look at things slightly differently than people do. And then the dog is behind you, and the village is behind you, and the open valley is ahead, and the tracks are carrying you forward into the deepening morning. The mountains here are closer together, the valley floor narrower, and the sense of being enclosed by stone and snow is stronger than it was in the open stretches earlier. But it is not a claustrophobic enclosure. It is the kind that feels protective, like the walls of a room rather than the walls of a cell. The peaks on either side are so high that they seem to lean slightly inward at the top, though this is only perspective, the way that tall things look when you stand at their base and tilt your head back. You are not at their base, you are moving through the floor of the valley between them, and they are enormous on either side, and you are small and warm inside your moving train, and this smallness is not frightening. It is, in its own way, a relief. There is something freeing about being small in front of very large things, something that takes the pressure off. The mountains are not watching you, they are not judging you, they are not expecting anything of you. They are simply there in the way that they have always been there, doing nothing at all except existing with great patience and complete certainty. And in their presence, all the things that usually feel urgent begin to feel, if not trivial, then at least smaller and further away. The train hums beneath you, the wheels turn. The carriage rocks its gentle rocking, and the mountains pass on either side, enormous and calm and endlessly patient. A long tunnel approaches, you see it before the train enters it, the dark mouth in the rock face, the rails narrowing toward it in the way that parallel lines appear to narrow at a distance, the sudden absence of light beyond the opening. The train does not slow for the tunnel. It continues at its same steady pace, and the darkness arrives at the window in a single clean moment, and then you are inside. The tunnel changes everything. The window, which has been your constant companion and orientation point, becomes a dark mirror. The carriage interior is reflected in it now, and you can see yourself, or a version of yourself, a dim shape in the glass sitting in the seat, surrounded by the warm light of the overhead lamps. The other passengers are visible too, their reflections softened and vague. The seat backs, the luggage rack, the rounded ceiling, all of it is there in the glass, a duplicate world that exists only for the duration of the tunnel. The sound changes completely. In the open air, the sound of the train was expansive, spreading outward in every direction before the mountains returned it as a faint echo. In the tunnel, the sound has nowhere to go. It fills the space around you completely, the rhythm of the wheels louder and more present, the engine note deeper and more resonant, the movement of air against the train audible now as a steady, low roar. It should perhaps feel overwhelming, but it doesn't. It feels instead like being held more completely. The sound a kind of envelope surrounding you on all sides, the tunnel itself a hand closed gently around the train. The darkness outside the window is absolute. There is no sky, no mountain, no tree. There is only the reflection of the carriage interior, shifting slightly as the train moves, and the darkness beyond it, and the sound of your passage through stone. You breathe slowly, in and out. The air in the tunnel is cooler, slightly damper, carrying the smell of rock and the faint metallic bite of the rails. You breathe it in without hurry, and let it out without hurry, and the train carries you forward through the mountain. A long minute passes, then another. The tunnel is a long one, the mountain it passes through substantial, and there is a quality to this enclosed time that is separate from the time outside, slower, more interior, the world reduced to the carriage and its sounds, and the faint image of your own reflection in the dark window. Then light, a pale gray circle ahead, growing larger, and the train moves toward it, and the sound begins to change back, to open up, and the circle becomes a rectangle, and then an archway, and then the full wide frame of the outside world, and you emerge. The mountains are different on this side of the tunnel. The light is different. The valley is longer and wider, and the peaks ahead are taller, and the snow is deeper, and the sky has shifted from its morning pale to something slightly richer, still blue, still winter blue, but with more depth in it, as if the day has matured while you were inside the mountain. The window becomes a window again, the reflection fades, and outside there is white and blue and the slow scroll of the alpine world, and you are through the mountain, and the journey continues. A forest of birch trees appears on the right side of the track. Their white trunks are startling against the snow, almost too white, almost artificial, the black markings on their bark sharp and precise. The birches are lighter and more delicate than the pines, their branches thin and reaching, their small twigs catching the light in a way that makes them look like they are made of wire. The snow in this forest is pristine and untracked, lying in smooth curves between the trunks. Nothing has disturbed it, no footprints. No fallen branches, just the snow and the birches, and the light filtering through the thin canopy above. You pass through the birch forest slowly, watching the trees scroll past. Each one is slightly different from the last, slightly thicker or thinner, slightly closer to the tracks or further away, its branches arranged in a slightly different pattern. But the differences are subtle enough that the overall impression is of something rhythmic, something like music, the visual equivalent of a phrase repeated with small variations, the way a stream repeats its sound without ever saying exactly the same thing twice. The birch forest ends, open meadow returns. Ahead, the valley curves to the right and the train follows it, and on the inside of the curve, the snow slope rises sharply, and on the outside of the curve, the ground falls away toward a frozen stream bed far below. The carriage leans slightly into the curve, and you lean with it, naturally, without thinking, your body knowing what to do. Around the curve, a new vista opens, another lake larger than the first, stretching a full kilometer from end to end, its surface gray-white and perfectly still. At its far end, a cascade has been frozen mid-fall, the water stopped in the act of descending, its white foam locked into stillness by weeks of hard cold. From this distance, it looks like a column of white lace against the dark rock. Closer, you imagine, you could see the individual frozen drops, the individual frozen arcs of water caught in the moment of their falling. The lake passes, the frozen waterfall passes. The valley continues its slow, patient unfolding. You feel the warmth of the carriage as a physical thing now, not as a default condition that you stopped noticing, but as an active presence, a temperature that presses gently against your skin and keeps the cold outside at arm's length. You are grateful for it in a way that is almost wordless. It is the gratitude of the body rather than the mind, a deep and simple appreciation for warmth when the world outside is cold, for shelter when the open air is vast and still and freezing. The window is doing its work, keeping the two worlds separate, the world of cold and silence and mountains outside, and the world of warmth and motion and quiet human presence inside. You are on the border between them, able to see the one while living in the other. The morning deepens, the light changes as the sun climbs behind its thin winter clouds and begins to soften toward the gold of midday. The shadows of the mountains have shortened. The snow in the shadowed areas is still blue, but lighter now, less sharply delineated. The snow in the sunlit areas glows. Another village appears, this one slightly larger than the first. A main street runs parallel to the tracks for 100 meters or so. You can see it briefly, the street surface packed with snow, a few parked cars half buried along its edges, shop fronts with their signs mostly obscured by frost on their windows. A cafe, you think, or perhaps a small hotel, its sign swinging slightly in a wind you cannot feel from inside the train. Two figures are walking along the street, bundled in dark coats, their breath visible. They do not look up at the train. They are deep in conversation, their heads closed together, their footsteps leaving dark prints in the snow behind them. Then the village is gone, and the fields return, and the mountains return, and the train continues its moving through the white and quiet landscape. You shift slightly. In the seat, your body adjusts without effort, finding a marginally different arrangement that is, improbably, even more comfortable than the last. One shoulder drops a little lower, your head rests more fully against the headrest. The small of your back finds a new point of contact with the seat's support. You are settling, the way sediment settles in still water, finding by gravity and patience the position of deepest rest. Your breathing has slowed. You have not counted your breaths or tried to slow them. It has simply happened, the way so many things happen on this train without intention in its own time. Each breath in is long and easy, and each breath out is longer, releasing something, releasing the small accumulated tensions of muscles that forgot they were tense. With each exhale, you feel slightly heavier. With each inhale, slightly more spacious. The two sensations together, weight and openness, are deeply comfortable, deeply familiar, the way your body feels when it is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. The train passes over a long, straight section of track. No curves, no rises, no falls. Just rails stretching ahead in perfect parallel lines toward a horizon of mountains, and the train on those rails and the steady, patient sound of wheels turning. The vibration in the floor is completely even. The rocking of the carriage has stilled. Everything is smooth and level and continuous, and the sound of the journey is a single sustained note, not musical exactly, but tonal, the way white noise is tonal, filling the space of hearing without demanding any attention. You could almost be still, almost be a fixture in the landscape, something that the mountains look at rather than something that looks at them. Almost be part of the train itself, another element of its quiet machinery, its purpose simply to move through the mountains at the same unhurried pace, watching the world from behind glass, warm and held and going nowhere in particular and everywhere at once. A group of children appear on a slope to the left of the tracks. They are far enough away that you cannot hear them, but you can see them clearly, 6 or 7 figures in bright-colored jackets, orange and red and yellow against the white, sledding down the hillside on what must be a well-worn run, given how smooth and fast it looks. One of them reaches the bottom and tumbles sideways into the snow, limbs spread wide. Even from this distance you can feel the laughter in the fall, the complete, unself-conscious laughter of someone landing in deep, soft snow without any consequence whatsoever. The others follow, one after another, some making it upright to the end of the slope, some tumbling partway, all of them scrambling back up to the top to go again. You watch them until the curve takes them from sight. Then the slope is empty and white again, and the tracks unwind ahead, and the mountains continue their slow procession past your window. There is something in that image that stays with you, the colors against the white, the small human figures in the enormous landscape, the joy that was visible even from a distance and at speed. You do not try to hold on to it. You simply let it have been, let it be already a part of the long memory of this journey, stored somewhere soft and accessible, neither forgotten nor demanded back. The valley narrows again. The trees close in on both sides, very close to the tracks now, their lower branches sometimes reaching toward the train as it passes, brushing the air just outside the window. The light in the carriage dims slightly and takes on the green-brown filter of a forest in winter. Above the treetops, the sky is reduced to a narrow strip, and then the trees pull back and the sky returns, and you pass through this alternation, forest, sky, in a gentle rhythm that matches, loosely, the rhythm of the wheels below. A wooden sign on a post at the edge of the forest. You cannot read it from here, you pass too quickly, but it has the look of a trail marker, an arrow, perhaps, pointing up into the trees along a path that is now invisible beneath the snow. Somewhere up that unseen trail you imagine is something worth pointing toward, a viewpoint perhaps, a mountain hut shuttered for winter, a summit. Whatever it is above you now and you are below, moving through the valley floor while the mountain holds its secrets above the tree line. The forest gives way to open hillside. A herd of something deer perhaps, or chamois, you cannot be certain from this distance, is moving slowly across the slope about halfway up. They are dark against the snow, their movement so unhurried and deliberate that at first you take them for rocks. Then one of them lifts its head and turns, and you see the line of a neck, the curve of an ear, and the whole group resolves from landscape into animals, 7 or 8 of them, picking their way along some invisible path through the snow, with the calm efficiency of creatures that have been doing this every winter for as long as there have been winters. You watch them for as long as the train allows. Then the angle changes and they are gone behind a ridge, and you are looking at empty hillside again, and the tracks and the mountains beyond, and the pale winter sky above. The sun has moved. You notice it by the quality of light more than its position. The gold has deepened slightly. The shadows lengthened again in the way that afternoon lengthens shadows, and there is something in the air outside that suggests the peak of the day has passed and the long, slow decline toward evening has begun. It is not late yet. The day has hours left. But the change is in motion, and you can feel it the way you feel a mood shift before you can name it. Something in the light, something in the quality of the cold outside the window, something in the slight deepening of the blue in the shadows on the snow. The mountains in the distance are turning slightly rosy on their upper faces. It is barely perceptible, the very first suggestion of the color that will deepen over the hours ahead, but it is there, a warmth in the white that was not there this morning, a faint blush of amber at the highest peaks where the afternoon sun reaches them at an angle that it could not reach in the morning. Inside the carriage, the overhead lights have become more noticeable. They were on all morning, low and warm, the kind of lights that are present without asserting themselves, but in the morning brightness from the window overwhelmed them. Now, as the exterior light begins its long afternoon softening, the interior lamps reassert themselves gently, casting a warmer, closer glow over the seats and the passengers and your own hands resting in your lap. The carriage feels different in this light, more interior, more sealed. As if the train has gradually become its own small world, a pocket of warmth and lamplight moving through the cold blue of a winter afternoon. The distinction between inside and outside sharpens as the afternoon progresses, the outside becoming colder in the imagination, the inside becoming warmer by contrast, and your position here in this seat in this light feeling increasingly like exactly the right place to be. Another station, this one you almost. Miss, your eyes were resting, soft focused on the middle distance, and the platform arrived while you were somewhere between looking and not looking. You register it by the slowing of the wheels, the brief sound of brakes, the station roof passing the window, and then the stillness again as the train pauses. The platform here is slightly longer than the last, and there are more people on it. An older couple stands together near the far end, both in long dark coats, the woman's arm through the man's in the easy way of people who have stood this way together for many years. They are not looking at the train. They are looking at something further down the platform, or perhaps just looking together at the same piece of cold afternoon air, comfortable in their parallel attention. A young man with a large backpack boards at the near end of the carriage. He moves down the aisle with the careful negotiation of someone trying not to disturb others, his backpack catching the overhead rack as he passes, and he slides into a seat 2 rows ahead of you. You hear the backpack being stowed, the zip of a jacket, the small sounds of someone settling, then stillness again. The train exhales and moves. The station falls back and away, the platform, the couple in dark coats, the lanterns beginning to glow now as the afternoon light reduces, all of it receding in the smooth, unhurried way of this whole journey. The afternoon opens into one of those stretches that alpine travelers recognize, a long valley with no tunnel, no station, no sudden change of scenery, just the slow, wide passage of mountain and sky and snow-covered ground, the train making its way through it with perfect patience. This is the kind of stretch that allows the journey to become truly rhythmic, to fall into a long and even pace that makes time feel different, not faster or slower, exactly, but more continuous, less punctuated, more like a single sustained note than a melody. The mountains here are not the jagged, dramatic peaks of the earlier morning. They are older-looking peaks, their edges worn rounder by more years of weather, their faces less vertical and more gradual, their slopes broken by long terraces where the snow settles in broad horizontal bands before the slope continues upward. They have the look of things that have survived a very long time by being willing to be slowly, incrementally changed, and there is something comfortable in there. Rounded permanence, something that asks nothing of you except to observe. You watch them pass peak after peak, each one different in detail, similar in character. The snow patterns on each one are unique. Here a long ridge of bare rock where the wind has been at work. There a smooth, unbroken white face where the snow has built up over months of quiet accumulation. Here a shadow cast by an overhanging cornice, making a dark line across the slope that looks almost drawn. There a gleam of ice on a north-facing cliff, catching the late afternoon sun at an angle that makes it burn briefly and brilliantly before the train's angle shifts and the gleam disappears. You are not holding onto any of it. You are letting each thing pass in the order that the train delivers it, each mountain, each shadow, each gleam of ice, coming and then going at the same measured pace, neither too fast to see nor too slow to let go of. This is what the train gives you, this rhythm of arrival and passing, this practice of receiving and releasing without effort. Your hands have not moved for some time. They rest exactly where they were, your fingers loose, the spaces between them open. There is nothing in your hands, nothing they need to hold. The light outside the window is definitely amber now. The afternoon is making its long declaration. The peaks to the west, the ones the sun is moving toward, are holding a warmth in their white faces, a deep gold that is mixing with the blue of the shadows, creating in the valleys between them a color that is neither gold nor blue but something entirely its own, the color of late winter afternoons in mountains, a color that has no exact name. The tracks curve into this color, the train moves into it, and you ride through the amber and the blue, through the mountain afternoon, watching the light change with the same unhurried attention with which you have watched everything else on this journey. Another tunnel, shorter than the first, the darkness lasting only 30 seconds or so, enough to reset your eyes, to make the reflection in the window appear and then dissolve again as the train emerges on the other side, and the mountains appear again, different again, a new arrangement of peaks and slopes and shadows, and the afternoon continues. The new valley on this side of the mountain is oriented differently, you can tell by the shadows. The light here is slightly more raked, more from the side, and the shadows are longer and more sharply angled. The snow on the western faces of things is lit warmly. The snow on the eastern faces is already beginning to take on the cool blue of shadow that will deepen as evening approaches. The village that appears here is a larger one. A proper small town, perhaps. You can see several streets, a church with a painted clock on its tower face, the time visible as a white circle with dark hands pointing somewhere past 4. A school, its windows lit from within, the yellow light warm and specific against the cold blue of the afternoon. A row of shops along the main road, some with awnings, some without, their facades painted in the pale yellows and greens and ochres that seem to belong to alpine towns the way their steeply pitched roofs belong to them. Colors that look right against snow and mountain and pale winter sky. The train passes through the town station, a slightly grander affair than the small wooden stops earlier, this one with a covered waiting area and painted benches and a timetable board whose letters and numbers you can almost read as the train slides past. Several people are on the platform, some waiting, some just arrived, some simply standing in that particular way that people stand at stations, slightly uncertain, slightly watchful, aware of the possibility of arrivals and departures. A woman on the platform looks up at the train as it passes. She's wearing a red hat and her face is lifted toward the carriages, and for a moment she seems to look directly at your window, at you in your warm seat passing through. Then she is past, and the platform is past, and the town recedes behind you, its yellow windows growing smaller, its clock tower falling away, and the mountains close in again on either side, and the valley continues its slow journey toward evening. You have been on this train for a long time. You know this in a way that doesn't have an hour attached to it. You know it in your body, in the depth of your relaxation, in the way the journey has become a kind of permanent present, as if there was never a time before the train in the mountains. The morning seems very far away now, though not in a sad way, far in the way that things are far when you are deeply rested, and the day has been long and gently full. The seat holds you, the rhythm holds you, the warmth holds you. Outside, the amber of the afternoon has deepened still. Further, moving toward the particular deep gold that precedes the color changes of sunset. The mountains that catch the direct light are burning with it, not dramatically, not ostentatiously, but in the quiet and inevitable way that mountains burn in the late afternoon, as if the rock and snow are radiating something that was stored over the long day and is only now being released. The shadows have taken over most of the valley floor. The tracks are in shadow. The train moves through it smoothly, the shadow making no difference to its progress, and above the shadow the lit peaks rise, and above the peaks the sky is deepening its blue, and in the east you can see a sliver of it through the window if you lean slightly. The blue is already darkening toward what will eventually become the first navy of evening. The air inside the carriage is still warm. If anything, warmer than it was, the heating system adjusting to the cooling outside, maintaining the interior at its same comfortable temperature with the quiet efficiency that good systems maintain, the ones you only notice when you realize how completely comfortable you have been without ever having to think about it. A child a few rows ahead of you has fallen asleep. You can see the small, tousled head resting against the window, the chest rising and falling in the deep, completely unguarded rhythm of a child's sleep, that sleep that arrives suddenly and completely without negotiation or ceremony, simply because the body decided it was time. The child's hands are curled in their lap, the fingers loose, the whole posture one of absolute release. You recognize something in that posture, something your own body is approaching in its slower adult way with its greater habits of holding. The mountains turn gold, the sky deepens. The train moves through the long alpine afternoon toward the evening that is coming slowly, as evenings always come in mountains, announced long in advance by the changing light, arriving without drama, bringing with it the deep quiet and the deep cold that are the gifts of mountain nights. You are still here, still warm, still held by this seat and this rhythm and this train, and the journey continues as journeys do into the changing light. The first true color of sunset arrives at the highest peaks. You see it before you can name it, a shift in the quality of the gold, a deepening toward rose, as if the mountains have absorbed the whole day's worth of pale winter sun and are now returning it in this warmer, richer form. The peak directly ahead, the tallest one, the one the train seems to be moving toward, though it is probably still many hours distant, has taken on this color along its upper edge, and below the color, the white of the snow seems bluer by contrast, and below the white, the forested slopes are already dark, already in the gray-green of shadow. The change is happening slowly. This is how mountain sunsets work, not in minutes, but in the long, generous time of high altitude and wide horizons, the colors shifting through their progressions with a patience that allows you to watch each stage if you choose, or to simply let the whole thing wash over you if you don't. You don't choose, you simply receive it. The rose deepening toward salmon, the salmon toward amber, the amber toward the first suggestions of coral at the very highest points. The blue of the shadows deepening at the same rate, blue into indigo, indigo into the purple-gray that precedes proper darkness. The valley floor is fully in shadow now. The tracks are dark, the trees on either side of the train are dark, but above the tree line, above the ridges, the colors continue their slow burning, and through your window looking upward, you can see the peaks still lit in the last warm light of this winter day. The carriage interior is fully lit now, the overhead lamps doing their quiet work, making the window into a reflection again at the lower angles while the sky above is still bright enough to see through. You sit between these two views, the lit interior reflected in the glass, and beyond it, just barely visible, the fading colors of the alpine evening. Everything is very quiet. The sound of the train has not changed, it never changes, the steady, even percussion, but everything around it has grown quieter, the way the world grows quieter as the day winds toward its close, as if the mountains are doing the same thing you are doing, settling toward stillness, releasing the energy of the day, preparing for the long rest of the night. You are very still, very warm, very held. And outside the window, the last light is leaving the mountains, the peaks releasing it one by one, the colors cooling and fading as the sky deepens overhead, and the stars, not yet, but soon, are waiting in the dark above the dark mountains, patient as mountains are patient, ready to. The last color leaves the mountains so gradually that you cannot say exactly when it goes. One moment the highest peaks are holding a deep rose at their summits, a final brightness against the darkening sky, and then you blink or look away for a moment, or simply let your eyes rest without focusing on anything in particular, and when you look again, the color is gone. The mountains are dark shapes now against a sky that is still lighter than they are, a deep blue-gray that is the sky's own farewell to the day, its final luminous exhale before it gives itself over to the dark entirely. The peaks are silhouettes, each one distinct, each one its own particular shape against the sky, this one with a sharp summit like a letter cut into paper, that one with a broad and rounded shoulder, another with a long diagonal ridge that slopes left to right and then drops away at the end into nothing. They are the same mountains you have been watching all day, but they are different now, simplified by the loss of light into their essential shapes, and there is something almost more beautiful about them this way, stripped of color and texture, reduced to pure form against the last pale sky. And then even the sky darkens. The pale blue-gray deepens to navy, and the navy darkens, and the first stars appear. They do not arrive all at once. The brightest come first, one by one, stepping out of the deep sky with a kind of deliberateness, as if each one has decided independently that it is time. A single point of light in the southwest, then another, higher, slightly fainter. Then a third, almost directly overhead, visible through the upper edge of your window if you tilt your head back slightly against the headrest. And then more and more, each new arrival not dramatic but cumulative, until the sky above the mountains is scattered with them, scattered and deepening still, and you are watching a winter sky appear over alpine peaks in the quiet interior of a slow-moving train. The stars over the mountains are very clear. The cold air has taken the moisture out of it, and the darkness here is real darkness, not the orange-tinged darkness of cities and towns, but the deep and transparent dark of high places far from lights, and through it the stars burn with a clarity that is almost startling, a sharpness that makes them feel closer than they ever feel in softer skies. The Milky Way is beginning to be visible in the east, a faint smear of accumulated light, and you watch it take shape above the ridgeline, its presence less like a thing and more like a texture in the sky. A granularity of light that reveals itself only when you look slightly to one side rather than directly at it. The window is partly a mirror now. Your reflection is clearer in the nighttime glass, the interior of the carriage lit warmly behind you, your face a dim shape in the dark glass, the stars very faint but visible above your own image in the reflection. You exist in both worlds simultaneously, the lit carriage interior, the cold night sky. You are at the border as you have been all day, between warmth and cold, between inside and out, and the border feels, if anything, more comfortable now, the contrast sharper, the warmth more defined, your sense of being safely held within it more complete. The train moves through the darkness. The world outside the window is changed, the mountains no longer the painted backdrop they were during the day, but a presence felt more than seen, dark masses against the dark sky, their shapes known rather than visible, the sense of their height and their proximity more felt than observed. The valley floor is invisible, the trees are invisible. Only the faint movement of dark shapes against darker sky gives any indication of how close the forest is, how high the ridges are, how deep the country through which you are moving. And yet it does not feel dark, it feels like evening. It feels like the world finding its rest. The heating system in the carriage settles into its night mode, or perhaps it is only your perception that changes, but the warmth feels different now than it did in the afternoon. More interior, more complete, as if the cold outside has become absolute enough to make the inside temperature something remarkable, something that deserves attention and gratitude. The air on your face is warm, the space around your body is warm. The seat beneath you and behind you holds its warmth the way a good coat holds it, without effort, simply by being what it is and doing its quiet job. You feel the warmth in your hands particularly. They have been resting in your lap for a long time now, fingers loose, palms slightly upward, and the blood moving through them is warm and slow and easy. You are aware of your hands in the way you become aware of things when you are very still, and there is nothing demanding your attention, each finger resting exactly where it is settled, the slight weight of one hand against the other, the warmth of the contact. Your hands have done nothing on this journey. They have held nothing, carried nothing, operated nothing. They have simply rested, and in resting they have become part of the general stillness of your body, which is very still now, very settled, very far from the small habitual tensions of ordinary days. Your feet are warm too. The floor of the carriage radiates heat, not intensely but steadily, the warmth rising through the soles of your shoes and into your feet and up into your ankles, a warmth so even and continuous that you have stopped noticing it as a sensation and it has become simply a condition, the state of being that your body inhabits, which is warm, which is at rest, which is carried. Another station, you know this one before you see it, the change in the wheel's rhythm as the train begins its gentle deceleration, the sound softening and lengthening in the same way it has softened and lengthened at each station throughout the day. Then the lights appear. A string of yellow lights along the platform edge, their reflections in the windows of the carriages, the lit interior of the station building, warm behind its windows. The platform here is lit by overhead lamps, and their light falls in pools on the snow-dusted boards, each pool separate and warm, the spaces between them cool and shadowed. A man on the platform is waiting in one of the pools of lamplight. He is older, wearing a long dark coat and a hat, and he stands with the patience of someone who has been waiting long enough that waiting has stopped being something he is doing and has become simply the state he is in. He holds a small bag. He does not look at the train until it has nearly stopped, and then he looks at it with an expression that is calm and steady, the expression of a man who has taken many trains over many years and has long since stopped being surprised by them. He boards, the door closes, the train exhales and moves. And then the lights of the station are behind you, receding in the glass, growing smaller and then gone, and outside your window there is only the dark again, and the stars above the mountains, and the faint cold gleam of snow on the nearer slopes catching what little light there is from the train's own passage. The man with the dark coat walks past you down the aisle. He does not look. At you, he is thinking about something, or perhaps thinking about nothing, his eyes distant and inward, and he passes with the careful quiet of someone moving through a sleeping space, and settles into a seat further back in the carriage, and after a few minutes the sounds of his settling resolve into silence, and the carriage is still again. The mountains at night, this is what you are inside now, not just near them, not just passing through the landscape that they define, but genuinely inside the night world of the high places, the world that most people only know from the outside, from the valleys below, looking up at the dark shapes against the starry sky. You are in it, you are moving through it. The train is carrying you through the alpine night with the same unhurried certainty with which it has carried you through the day, and the night is not frightening and not cold and not lonely. Not from in here, not from this warm seat, not with this rhythm beneath you and this steady warmth around you. A frozen lake appears briefly on the right. You know it by the particular quality of its darkness, the flat, unbounded dark of open ice versus the textured dark of the snow-covered ground. The lake has no color in the nighttime, but it has a kind of luminosity, the faint reflected glow of stars gathered and softened by the ice surface, a dim mirror lying in the valley floor. For perhaps 30 seconds you can see it as the train curves through the valley. Then the angle changes and it is gone, absorbed back into the general dark, and you are left with only the memory of its faint gleam. Above the ridge on your left, one of the peaks is still very faintly lit, or no, it is something else, not lit from below by the absent sun, but somehow luminous in itself. The snow reflecting the light of the stars and the sliver of moon that has appeared low in the western sky, barely a crescent, its light thin and silver. The peak catches this moonlight and holds it, just enough to make its shape visible against the sky, a dark sky and a slightly less dark mountain, the distinction between them a thing you almost imagine rather than actually see. Almost imagine, but there. The moon, it is very thin and very low, and it will set soon. You can see that from the angle of it, the way it lists toward the ridge on the western horizon, the way the ridge has already taken a piece of it, the tip of the crescent disappearing behind. The mountain's edge, but for now it is there, adding its faint contribution to the light of the alpine night, making the snow surfaces faintly visible where otherwise there would be only dark. You watch the moon in the narrow crescent above the ridge until the train curves and it drops behind the peaks. Then it is gone, and the stars are left to do the work alone, and they are doing it very well. The rhythm of the wheels is what you hear most clearly now. Everything else has settled into a background that your mind has learned to live within, to treat as the ground condition of experience rather than as the foreground. The heating hum is background, the occasional creak of the carriage is background. The breathing of the other passengers, you cannot actually hear it, but you are aware of it as a kind of presence. The accumulated breath of a carriage full of people who are resting is background. And set against all of this background in the foreground is the wheels. The wheels speak in a language of percussion and rhythm, a language that is not words but is communicative nonetheless. It says moving, it says steady, it says continuing. It says these things over and over in its patient, repetitive way, not urgently, not insistently, but consistently, reliably, the way a heartbeat says, beating. You do not need to listen to it in order to receive its message. The message comes through your body directly, through the vibration in the seat and the floor and the air, delivered without intermediary, arriving without any effort of reception on your part. You are moving, you are steady, you are continuing. The carriage takes a long, slow curve to the right. You feel it before you see any change in the window, the faint lateral pull, the slight tilt, the weight of your body shifting very gently in the seat. The stars through the upper window move slowly across the glass from left to right as the train turns, maintaining their positions relative to one another but shifting relative to you, relative to the frame of the window, reminding you that you are the one moving, that the stars are still, that this whole vast and patient universe is exactly where it was when you boarded this train this morning. Around the curve, a light appears in the darkness. A distant light far up the valley, a cluster actually of lights, the scattered illumination of a town or a large village, its glow diffusing into the cold air. Above it, making a gentle dome of amber light that is visible long before the town itself. You move toward it slowly, the way you have moved toward everything on this journey, without haste, without urgency, at the pace the train has chosen, which is the right pace, the only pace, the pace of deep and patient movement through a nighttime landscape. The town grows slowly larger. First the glow, then individual lights becoming distinguishable within the glow, then shapes, rooftops, a water tower, the lit spire of a church, then streets with their overhead lights making orange pools on the snow, then the station and the platform and the train sliding to its familiar gentle stop. This station is warm-looking in the night, more so than in the day. Its lights seem brighter and more welcoming against the surrounding darkness, and the heated waiting room inside the glass doors glows yellow and amber, and through the glass you can see the backs of a bench and a woman sitting on it reading something, the lamp above her making a little circle of personal light around her and her book, and this image, the woman, the lamp, the book, the warmth, is so complete and self-contained that it seems almost like a painting, a small painting of contentment in a glass frame. A few people board here, a few others leave. The exchanges are quiet, the particular quiet of late evening travel when everyone has been moving for long enough that social energy has settled, and the unspoken agreement to move gently and speak softly has become second nature. Bags are arranged, seats are adjusted, a jacket is folded and tucked between a head and a window, making a pillow. The small choreography of people settling in for the long part of a journey. Then the train exhales and moves. The station lights slide backward past the window. The woman with her book disappears. The glow of the town contracts and separates and then is gone around a curve, and outside your window is once again the alpine night, the dark valley, the dark slopes, the mountains as silhouettes, the stars. You let your eyes close, not deliberately, not as a decision, but in the way that eyes close when they have been open long enough and the thing they are looking at is soft enough and familiar enough to allow it. They do not close fully, perhaps. There is a sliver of the window still visible through your lashes, a vague bright and dark, the suggestion of stars and snow, but they close enough that the world outside becomes peripheral, something registered at the edge of attention rather than its center. The center of your attention, such as it is the train. The feeling of it, the warmth and the rhythm and the slow cradling sway of the carriage on the night track, the weight of your own body in the seat, the specific satisfying heaviness of a body that has given over its effort and its vigilance and is content to be simply completely at rest. The steady sound of wheels on rails, which is no longer a sound you are listening to, but a sound you are inside, the way you are inside the train, the way the train is inside the night. There is a version of sleep that is not quite sleep, a threshold state, a border territory where awareness persists but changes quality, becomes softer and less attached to outcomes, becomes something you experience rather than something you do. You may be in that territory now. You may have been approaching it for the last hour, the way the train has been approaching the mountains all day, steadily, without drama, covering distance without rushing it. In this state, the train's rhythm is not something outside you, but something you are part of. The wheels turning, the carriage swaying, the engine humming in its low register, these are not separate from you, but woven into you, part of the fabric of your experience in this particular moment, which is the only moment there is. The mountains are out there, dark and enormous and still. You know this without seeing it. You carry it as a kind of comfortable knowledge, the knowledge of their presence, the fact that they are there, that they have been there, that they will be there when morning comes and the light returns and you wake if you sleep or rest if you don't, in the same seat with the same view, and the mountains will still be there, unchanged by the night, unchanged by the passing of the train through their darkness. This is a comforting thought, not because it changes anything, but because it confirms the permanence of the world you are moving through, its indifference to the small passage of time, its commitment to simply being what it is, mountain and valley and cold and snow, and the patient, patient sky. A long tunnel, you feel it coming in the particular way you have come to feel tunnels on this journey, a darkness at the edge of the window, a deepening, the rock. Face visible briefly as the tunnel mouth approaches, and then the absolute dark. The The sound fills the carriage completely, the hollow boom of the train in the tunnel, the walls close on both sides and the ceiling close above, and the sound filling every space between you and the rock. A sound that is intimate and encompassing. The train inside the mountain and you inside the train, and everything held inside everything else in a series of concentric enclosures, each one warm, each one certain. In the tunnel at night, with your eyes partly closed, there is almost no difference between looking and not looking. The darkness inside the tunnel at night is the same darkness as closed eyes, or close enough that the distinction barely matters. You exist in sound and sensation and warmth. The tactile world, the seat, the warmth, the vibration, the faint pressure of air moving. The auditory world, the wheels, the engine, the enclosed roar of passage through rock. No visual world at all. This is its own kind of rest. The rest of the eyes, the quiet given to the visual mind, which works so hard when there is light and shape and distance to process. In the tunnel, in the darkness, that mind goes still. It has nothing to do. And in its stillness, something opens, a kind of spaciousness that is not quite thought and not quite the absence of thought, but something gentler, something more like the quiet at the end of a long exhale, the held moment before the breath returns. The tunnel ends, light, or rather the night, which after the absolute dark of the tunnel seems almost light in comparison. The stars and the snow giving enough illumination that the world seems visible again, seems open and spacious after the enclosure of the mountain. You receive the night air and the night sky as a kind of spaciousness, an expansion of your world, and your eyes open slightly wider to receive it, and the mountains are there, and the stars are there, and the train moves through them, and you are here. Somewhere in the carriage, a phone lights up briefly, someone checking the time, perhaps, or settling an alarm, or simply the automatic brightness of a device acknowledging some small notification from the outside world. The light is brief, it doesn't disturb you. It simply registers, a faint brightening in your peripheral awareness, and then it is gone, and the carriage is back to its own quiet lamplight, and the night is back to its stars. The time, you don't know it. You have not known it for a long time, and this not knowing has become part of the texture of the journey, part of what makes the train feel like its own complete world, sealed from the schedules and appointments and urgencies of ordinary time. Time here is measured in valleys and peaks, in the alternation of light and dark outside the window, in the slow progression from morning to evening to night, in the gathering depth of your own rest. It is not a clock time. It is a larger, slower time, the time of the mountains themselves, which count their years in geological cycles rather than in minutes, in the rise and fall of ice ages rather than in the hands of a watch. You are living in that time now, or at least you have borrowed a few hours of it, and in the borrowing you have been freed from your own, and the freedom is complete and restful, a rest within the rest. The train has been climbing again. You know this by the engine's note, which has shifted almost imperceptibly, and by the faint backward lean of your body, not dramatic, not the pressing weight of a steep gradient, but the gentle, barely there incline of a track that is gaining altitude steadily, patiently, without any urgency. The mountains are higher here. The air outside is colder, you can tell even from inside. There's a quality to the cold that presses against the window glass, a coldness that makes the warmth inside feel more remarkable, more hard-won, more worth noticing. At the highest points of the visible ridges, the wind has been at work. You can see the shapes of the snow cornices, white overhanging curves at the summit edges, built up by the prevailing wind into long, smooth arcs that extend beyond the actual rock. In the starlight, they are just barely visible, pale shapes against the sky at the absolute tops of things, like the crests of frozen waves, beautiful and precarious, perfectly balanced for now, patient. The train crests whatever pass or ridge it has been climbing toward. You feel the shift in the engine's note, a subtle easing, the gradient releasing its claim, the track leveling and then beginning its long, gradual descent on the other side. The backward lean of your body resolves into level, and then the faintest suggestion of forward, the slight pull of the descent, the train beginning to use gravity rather than fight it, the wheels needing less urging from the engine. Management instead. On the other side of the pass, the valley is different. You can see this even in the dark, the shape of the space feels different. The mountains are ranged differently around the valley floor, the orientation of the slopes different, the way the stars sit above the ridgelines different. You have crossed from one drainage to another, from one side of the alpine watershed to the other, and everything from here will drain in a different direction, toward a different sea, carrying the snowmelt of these mountains to a different coast, centuries from now. This is the kind of thought that comes in the deep resting state that the train and the night and the mountains have brought you to. Not dramatic thoughts, not complicated thoughts, but thoughts with a particular quality of space in them, thoughts that seem connected to something large and slow and patient, thoughts that feel at home in the company of mountains. You let this one go as you have let all the thoughts go on this journey. They come and they are received and they pass like the landscape. The descent is gradual and very smooth. The train moves down the long slope on the far side of the pass with a kind of controlled ease, the brakes applying their gentle resistance at intervals that you feel as the most subtle modulation of the rhythm, fractional slowing, so slight it is almost imagined, and then the release and the rhythm continuing. The mountains on either side are still very high, but they have a different character now, broader based, their slopes more gradual, the valley between them wider. You are moving from high alpine country towards something slightly lower and larger, and the change is happening so gradually that you feel it primarily in the changing of the light. The stars are extraordinarily clear tonight. You have been watching them in the offhand, unfocused way that you have watched everything tonight, and they have been putting on a quiet and spectacular show that asks nothing of you, no special knowledge, no proper attention, just presence, just eyes willing to receive light that has been traveling toward them for thousands and millions of years. The winter constellations are up, the ones that belong to cold, clear nights in the northern mountains, and the arm of the Milky Way is properly visible now, a band of distributed light crossing from one horizon to the other above the valley, above the dark ridges. Arching high overhead. You don't know the names of the stars, this doesn't matter. They are there and they are very old and they are very far away, and they have been there every night since long before this train existed or these mountains had their current shape or there were eyes anywhere in the vicinity of this valley to see them. And they will be there every night after. And tonight you are here and they are there, and the train moves through the dark valley beneath them, and this is a complete and sufficient thing. A village appears in the valley far below, its light scattered on the valley floor like something spilled, warm and orange and irregular, the lights of lives being lived in the dark and cold of a winter night in the mountains. Some windows lit, some dark, a street lamp visible at a crossroads, its cone of light falling on the snow beneath it, a small circle of orange warmth. Smoke rising from chimneys, visible in the starlight as a faint disturbance of the dark, a twisting column that rises and disperses and becomes part of the night air. You are above this village still, the train moving along the side of the slope that overlooks it, and from here you can see the whole of it spread below, its rooftops, its streets, the church at its center, the dark fields around it, the forests beginning at its edge and climbing the slopes on either side. It is a quiet and self-contained place, a world complete in itself, going about its nighttime business without reference to the train above it or the mountains above the train. The descent brings you level with the village, and then the tracks curve down into the valley and you are alongside it, and then the station appears, a small station this one, a single platform and a single lamp and a sign with the village name in letters you read without retaining, the name of a village in the mountains at night, complete and specific, and then gone. No one boards here, no one leaves. The train pauses its regulation pause, the doors open and close, the air brakes exhale, and then you're moving again and the village retreats, its lights growing smaller and more scattered in the window as the train takes a long curve and the village slips behind the shoulder of a hill and is gone. The valley floor, you are on the valley floor now or near to it, the mountains rising on both sides to their full height, the valley between them open and wide, the train moving. Through it on its flat track with a smoothness that has increased now that the descent is behind you. The rhythm of the wheels on this level ground is perfectly even, perfectly regular, a metronome set to the pace of everything that is calm and steady and continuing, everything that does not hurry and does not tire. A frozen river is visible on the right, running alongside the tracks for several minutes, its surface slightly luminous with reflected starlight, its edges furred with frost and ice-fringed reeds. Somewhere beneath the ice the water is still moving. You know this as a fact even though it is invisible. The water is still finding its way through the dark and the cold, following the grade of the valley floor with the same patient insistence that it has always followed, the same direction, the same destination, doing its work in the dark as in the light, whether anyone is watching from a train or not. The river eventually veers away from the tracks, following its own course through the valley as the tracks follow theirs, and they separate as paths separate, both continuing, both heading in their own general direction through the night. You are very nearly asleep, or you are asleep and dreaming of the train, which is so like being awake on the train that the distinction has lost its importance. The two states have grown so close on this long journey that the border between them is a soft one, permeable, a membrane rather than a wall, and you drift through it without noticing, without any discontinuity in the experience, the train simply continuing in both worlds with the same unhurried certainty. The seat is part of you now, or you are part of the seat. There is no pressure, no discomfort, no point where your body and the upholstery are in disagreement. You have been here long enough that the seat has accepted the shape of you and you have accepted the shape of the seat, and together you form a single resting thing, warm and settled and heavy in the good way, the weight of deep rest rather than the weight of effort. Your breathing is very slow, in and then out, and the pause between them is longer than usual, a pause in which your body simply rests in the completion of the exhale, not yet ready to return to the inhale, content to be for a moment in the state of emptying, which is its own kind of fullness. Then the breath returns, gentle and unhurried, filling your chest slowly from the bottom up. Way a vessel fills with water, and at the top of it there is another pause, another brief rest in completion, and then the long, slow release again. Breath and wheels, wheels and breath. The two rhythms are slightly different, the wheels faster, the breath slower, but they are both rhythms, and together they create something more complex than either alone. The way two musical lines together create something richer than either can create by itself. Your body is inside both of them. Your body is the instrument through which both rhythms play. Another tunnel, this one is the longest yet. You know this because you have been tracking their length in the vague, barely conscious way that you track things in the state between waking and sleeping. And this one goes on, the darkness persisting, the sound filling and filling the carriage with its enclosed echo. The train moving through the mountain for what seems like a very long time, longer than any previous mountain, deeper inside the rock, the world reduced to pure sensation and pure sound. In the tunnel at night, with your eyes nearly closed, you float in a sensory world that is primarily about motion and warmth. The motion of the train, which you feel rather than see, the constant gentle sway and the vibration in the floor and the seat and the air. The warmth, which is absolute and surrounding, the warmth of an interior that has been maintained carefully through the long day and the growing night, the warmth that has been your companion since the first moment you sat down. These two things, motion and warmth, are so fundamental and so continuous that they have become the baseline conditions of existence, the ground beneath all other experience. You exist in warmth and motion, you are carried, and in the darkness of the tunnel, with the sound of the train all around you, this is so completely sufficient that nothing else seems necessary or even possible. The tunnel ends as all tunnels end. The darkness of the tunnel resolves into the darkness of the outside, and the outside darkness after the tunnel seems full of light, the stars bright, the snow luminous, the shapes of the mountains visible and distinct against the night sky. The sound of the train opens up again, spreading outward into the valley air, and the carriage, which was a sealed capsule inside the mountain, is once again a window in a moving frame, a vessel passing through an enormous world. The enormous world, it is dark and cold and immense and completely beautiful in its winter silence. The mountains holding the starlight on their snow faces, the valley floor dark and still, the air outside so cold and so clear that it seems almost like another element, not air exactly, but something purer, something that the mountains have been making for 10,000 years out of altitude and cold and the long, clean passage of time. You receive it through the window, its presence on the other side of the glass, the cold, the dark, the stars, the mountains, the silence, is something you feel as a kind of counterweight to the warmth inside, something that makes the warmth more real by contrast. The two sides of the window define each other. The cold makes the warmth, the dark makes the light. The enormity of the outside makes the small warmth of the carriage something almost miraculous, this bubble of heat and human comfort moving through the vast alpine night, carrying you forward, carrying you gently, carrying you through. The night has deepened, the stars have moved, all of them, imperceptibly but measurably, continuing their slow rotation around the pole, the whole sky turning on its ancient axis as it has turned every night since there was a sky to turn. The constellations are in different positions than they were when the first stars appeared. The whole sky has wheeled by some portion of its nightly arc, and this motion, this enormous, unhurried, utterly certain motion, is happening above you as the train's much smaller and much slower motion continues below, and you are between them, warm and still, part of neither rotation but present to both. The mountains are less visible than they were, not because clouds have come, the sky is still perfectly clear, the stars still burning, but because the moon has set completely and the night has entered its deepest phase, the hours when darkness is most thorough and most settled, when the night is most itself. The snow on the nearer slopes is still faintly luminous with starlight, and the peaks closest to you are still distinguishable as shapes against the sky. But the further mountains have merged with the sky itself, their darkness and the darkness of space becoming one continuous dark, the boundary between mountain and sky, something you know intellectually without seeing it. You are in the deepest part of the night. The train is in the deepest part of the night, and the night holds you both with the same patient indifference that mountains hold everything, not caring, not watching, simply being the condition within which you move. And in this condition, in this depth of night and mountain and warmth and motion, your body is as heavy and as rested as it has ever been. The journey has taken you somewhere that is not quite a place, not quite this valley or this train or this window, but a state, a condition of the body and the mind together. That is the destination of all long, gentle, unhurried passages. The destination of this train, whatever it is named and wherever the tracks eventually deliver it, matters less than this. Less than the fact of having traveled through light and through dark, through morning and afternoon and evening and night, through the changing moods of the alpine landscape, carried steadily and gently and without drama, held by warmth and rhythm, by the seat and the sway, and the continuous patient percussion of wheels on rails. A brief brightening on the horizon, not dawn, it is too soon for dawn, the night too deep and too recently arrived at its deepest to offer dawn yet, but something. A glow above a distant ridge, faint and white and steady, too high for a town's light and too regular for weather. The moon, perhaps, risen again after its brief setting, or the planet that sometimes rises large and bright in the small hours of clear winter nights. Whatever it is, it comes and it goes as the train moves through the valley, the angle shifting as the mountains intervene and release, the glow appearing and disappearing around the curves. When it is visible, it lights the snow on the higher slopes with a faint silver wash, enough to make the mountains visible again in their general shapes, the ridges, the upper slopes, the long shoulder of a peak catching the light on its western face. When it disappears behind the intervening mountains, the dark returns, complete and restful, and the stars are the only lights in the sky. The train moves through this alternation without comment. The light appears and the light disappears, and the train moves steadily through both. You move with the train, you are the train in the way that you have been carried so long and so completely that the boundary between passenger and vehicle has softened, the way all boundaries soften in the long hours of deep rest. You are part of the warm moving thing, part of its purpose and its passage, traveling through the night mountains toward a morning that is still far away but is, as all mornings are, already on its way. The wheels turn below you. The vibration is in your bones, gentle and constant, a frequency that your body has stopped noticing as external and simply absorbed as part of its own deep hum. The body's own rhythm and the train's rhythm having found some approximation of each other over these long hours of traveling together. Sound, warmth, motion, the three pillars of this night, the three conditions within which everything else has occurred: the day, the mountains, the valleys, the villages, the light and its changes, the dark and its arrival, all of it happening within the constant envelope of sound and warmth and motion. These three things have not changed since the first moment. They were there at the start and they are here now in the deep of the night, and they will be there at the end, whenever the end comes, and in their unchangingness they are a kind of anchor, a thread of continuity through the whole long day. You are anchored by them, you rest in them, you are carried by them forward through the dark. The forest has returned, you feel it rather than see it, the trees close to the tracks here, their presence a darkening at the edge of the window, a sense of enclosure, the stars intermittent now between the canopy. The sound of the train changes slightly in the forest, reflected by the trees in a different way than it is reflected in open valley, the echoes closer and quicker, giving the rhythm of the wheels a slight additional texture. You have learned to read these variations, the open valley sound, the tunnel sound, the bridge sound, the forest sound, each one a kind of news about the world outside, delivered through the ears while the eyes are resting. The forest at night, deep and cold and dark beyond the trees, the snow on the ground between the trunks illuminated very faintly by the stars that reach down through the gaps in the canopy. If you could step outside the train and walk into this forest, which you will not, which you have no intention of doing, you're staying exactly where you are, you would hear things that cannot be heard from inside the carriage. The pop of a tree in the hard cold, the sap freezing and the wood contracting, a sound like a gunshot in the stillness. The small fall of snow from a laden branch, a soft collapse, a whisper of weight released. The distant, barely audible call of an owl, impossibly far away, reaching from deep in the forest out to the edges where the sound of the train has been replacing the silence all evening. You don't step outside, you stay in your seat in your warmth in the train's rhythm. But you imagine these sounds, and the imagining of them is its own kind of quiet, the quiet of a forest heard from a warm place, the sounds of the cold reaching you safely, without chill, without demand, simply as the knowledge of a world that exists alongside this one and is doing its quiet work in the dark. A small river runs briefly alongside the tracks again, not the same one as before, a different river, a tributary perhaps, coming down from the slopes to the north and joining the larger watercourse somewhere downstream. The surface is not entirely frozen here. Perhaps the current is too quick, the gradient too steep, and where the water is exposed, it reflects the stars in the fragmented, ever-moving way that moving water reflects light. The stars broken up into shards and scattered across the dark surface and reassembled and broken up again in the continuous, unresolvable play of water and light. You watch the river for as long as it runs alongside you, which is perhaps a minute, perhaps two. Then the tracks curve away from it and it is gone, and the trees are back, and the dark is back, and the rhythm of the wheels is the only constant, as it has always been. In the seat, in the warmth, in the dark, in the quiet, in the deep, gentle motion of the train, you feel something that might be called completion. Not the completion of having arrived somewhere, the train is still moving, the journey continues, but the completion of having traveled far enough, deep enough, long enough into the gentle world of this night that you have found a place in it that feels right. A place of rest that is also a place of motion. A place of warmth that is also a place of cold, or the knowledge of cold, the awareness of it on the other side of the glass. A place of quiet that is also the continuous, patient, perfect sound of the wheels. This is where you are, this is what you have. The mountains outside in the dark, enormous and still and patient. The stars above them, older than the mountains and more patient still. The train between them moving through the night with the same steady certainty it has had all day, the carriage warm and dim, the other passengers resting, your own body heavy and still and breathing slowly in the deep and ordinary rhythm of the body at rest. The night asks nothing. This is what you understand now in this late and quiet hour, that the night asks nothing. Not the mountains, not the cold, not the dark, not the stars, none of them ask anything of you. You are simply here, passing through, and they are simply here, being what they are, and the coincidence of your passage through their world is a small and temporary thing that makes no demands on either party. The train asks nothing either. It is going where it is going, and you are going with it, and this is the whole of the arrangement. This is the full extent of what is required of you, to be here in this seat, breathing slowly, receiving the warmth, feeling the motion, hearing the wheels. Receiving, this is the thing the train has taught you today, over these long hours of sitting and watching and being carried. The receiving, the capacity to let things arrive without reaching for them, to let them pass without holding on to them, to remain in the present of the journey without pulling toward a destination or away from a memory. The mountains came and they passed, the tunnels came and they ended, the stations came and they were left behind. The light came and it changed and it became dark, and the dark is here now, and it too will pass, and the morning will come. All of it arriving, all of it passing, and you here at the center of it, receiving it all with the same steady openness, the same unhurried presence, the same willingness to simply be the one who is here. The wheels turn, the mountains stand in the dark, the stars wheel slowly overhead, and the train carries you forward through the night, through the long and patient night, through the dark and the cold and the silence of the alpine world, through the deep and restful hours that are theirs and that they share tonight with you. Somewhere ahead, though it is still far away, though the night is still the night and the dark is still the dark, the morning is already in preparation. The earth is already in the process of turning toward the sun. The far edge of the sky, not visible from here, not yet, not for hours, is already, in the most technical sense, lightening, the darkness there of a slightly different quality than the darkness directly. Above, a promise rather than a presence, the idea of light rather than light itself. You cannot see this. You are inside the mountains, in a valley, in a train, in a carriage, in a seat, inside the warmth and the motion and the sound of the wheels. but you know it in the way you know the things you cannot see but trust because they have always been true. The sun turning on its axis, the earth on its orbit, the seasons changing with a certainty that no winter can disturb. Somewhere beyond the mountains, beyond the dark and the cold and the patient stars, the morning is preparing itself. It will come. But not yet. There is still the night. There is still the dark. There is still the train moving through the valley, and the mountains on either side, and the stars above the mountains, and the warmth inside the carriage, and the rhythm of the wheels on the rails. There is still this, and this is more than enough. Your breathing is slow and even. Your body is completely still. The weight of it in the seat is the weight of deep rest, the specific gravity of a body that has released its vigilance and given itself over to the train, to the movement, to the warmth. There is nowhere you need to be other than here. There is nothing you need to do other than this. There is no thought that needs to be completed, no task that needs to be held in mind, no concern that needs to be carried through the night. The mountains are holding you, not the physical mountains. They are outside, enormous and indifferent, but the idea of them, the quality of them, the patience and the permanence and the deep silence that they embody, all of this has entered the carriage through the window over the long hours of traveling. And now it is inside with you in the air, in the warmth, in the steady sound of the journey continuing. You breathe in slowly. The air is warm and clean and faintly mineral, the air of the train and the mountains together, the air of this night. You breathe out slowly, releasing. The wheels turn below you, the carriage sways its gentle sway. The mountains stand in the dark outside the window, enormous and still, doing what mountains do, which is nothing, and everything, which is simply being with complete certainty in the place where they have always been. And the train moves through them, and you are on the train. And the night is long and dark and cold and beautiful. And you are warm, and you are moving, and you are here.